It's hard to remember good things for whatever reason. Your brain has a negativity bias. There's a lot of science, but you forget the things that you enjoy and you forget the things that keep you happy and healthy.
Welcome back to the show. I am especially glad that you're here because I'm here with my longtime friend, John Acuff. We are diving into so many great topics, whether you are interested in hearing him talk about writing or business or mindset or the new book that he wrote with his daughters. This is going to be one of your favorite podcast episodes. I guarantee it. And now, without further ado, here's my friend, John. My only regret of Smart Girl Summer, all these years doing Smart Girl Summer, is I can't have John Acuff on Smart Girl Summer because you're not a smart girl.
No,
you're a lot
I'm half
things.
of that equation. I'm half. The first half, the last half, I'm very much not.
So because I can't have you on Smart Girl Summer, I lured you in because we're going to talk about your book, but I want to ask you some questions about you as the business person and the writer.
Totally.
But I want to start with the hardest question first. Is there something that you've learned about yourself recently?
I learned I need help. I hired a business coach who's now become like the CRO of the company. I got my business to a certain place and I couldn't get it beyond me. And I needed outside investment and outside help to come in and go, hey, these 3 things aren't working. Like it's time. They haven't been working for years. We got to tweak them. We got to change them. So yeah, I would say I learned I needed help to get to next levels that, I'm a goal guy. I thought like, I can just goal my way there solo, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, I would say I've realized I needed outside help to get to new levels.
That's fantastic. A business coach is the number one way to do it. And for so many people, they go, I can't believe what I can do with a business coach. Why did I wait so long?
It's insane. But I mean, yeah. I think that you think you can't ask for help or hiring help is weakness or whatever hang up you have. So yeah, that would be something I've learned recently.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, let's talk about most people who have an online presence. The one thing that is their nemesis is having to show up on social media. How do you manage it? How do you protect yourself from comparison? And how do you psych yourself up to do it? Or maybe for you, it's easy to do.
It's not easy. I have to psych myself up for it. I think that a good definition of like goals is like the ability to talk yourself into things you might not want to do some days. Like there's a lot of days where I have to sell John Acuff on doing the thing that I know I ultimately want to do, but right now I'm kind of like, I don't really want to do that. So for me with social media, that's part of where I'm getting help. It's hard for me when somebody says, you got to do a lot of reels. I can't execute against a lot of. So like, it's easier when somebody goes, hey, you need a reel a day for the next 10 days. So can you film 10 reels? All right, I can do that. Like I can check it off. I can feel good about that. It's got a start and an end. And I know I'm making progress versus like when it's fuzzy, that's when it feels overwhelming to me. Is like, oh, you've got to be everywhere. How I deal with comparison is a lot of times I use soundtracks. I wrote this book about mindset called Soundtracks. And like, I used them the other day. I had this big meeting with like a bunch of successful authors. And I knew a week out, I knew how I would show up in that room if I wasn't deliberate, if I wasn't a smart boy, as it were. I would show up and feel inadequate. I'd compare myself. I'd feel like everybody else here has it all together. I don't have it all together. And I was like, okay, so I've done that in the past. Or I'd blow up my accomplishments to feel more adequate. Like I'd read people my resume and be like I'd over kind of share. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to get a lot out of the experience. So I came up with new soundtracks and I was like, I can hang in any room. I'm in that room on purpose. I learn more when I listen. So I wrote those down and thought about those. So then when I went to the event, like I was fully present because I wasn't wrestling with inadequacy or comparison or anything like that, but I had to work at it. So like, I'm just always finding ways to work at the things that I want to change. And if comparison is one of them, then I come up with soundtracks and then I come up with actions that make those soundtracks easy to be true.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. I could camp out there, but I wanted to first go back to Reels because every online content creator has an interesting relationship with Reels.
Yeah.
So say you have to do 10 As an author and a podcaster, you're amazing at long form content. How do you break it down and figure out what in the world do you want to say in under a minute or under a minute and a half?
I wrestle with perfectionism. So I do a lot of my reels right after I've run because I'm high on the endorphins.
Yeah.
I'm already sweaty. I won't do like if I film a lot in here, I worry about angles. I do retakes. I do reshoot. Like I get stuck in my head. It's really, really complicated inside this room. If I'm on a run, I'm already gross. I've got the endorphins. Like I'm feeling really positive emotionally. I'm not going to shoot multiple angles because there's neighbors walking by and that's weird. Like, so I do them in that environment as a hack against perfectionism. What I do is I'll collect like a single sentence where I'm thinking about something like, so the other day I was driving to a meeting and I was feeling stressed out about the election. And I was like, I'm going to turn all that stress into success. Like, so there's a soundtrack. I'm going to turn that stress into success. I can't change the election. But what I can do is take all that nervous energy and funnel it into writing and funnel it into running and funnel it into a thank you note. Like I'm not going to misuse that energy. I recognize it. Man, there's a lot of energy. Let me redirect it into something that's positive and moves me in the direction I want to go. So when I got somewhere, I opened up my phone and I wrote down that note, stress to success, can't change the election. I can change me, like a couple different ideas. So then when I'll block off an hour on my calendar if I'm actually going to really shoot like more than just the running reels. And I'll pull up that when I go and I'll go, okay, now I know where I'm going. Now I know where I'm headed. That's an interesting idea. And then I'm trying to get better at having a good opening statement and then a story and then not a call to action always, but at least so why don't you try this? Like, why don't you do this? So that's how I think about reels. Rarely do I write them all out. Like with launching How Teens Win, this new book my daughters and I wrote out 10 reels. So those required deliberate thought because there's deliberate steps. If you pre-order, this is what happens. Go to this URL, this is what happens. I can't keep all of that in my head at the same time. Same with if a client says to me, speaking client, we want you to do a 60-second video and blah, blah, blah. I have a script for that because I want it to be professional and excellent. And I don't want to say, come to the Hilton when it's really at the Hyatt, all that kind of stuff. So I'll do those more professionally.
Okay, that makes sense. That's so helpful because I've been so focused on figuring out everyone's hacks to turn on the phone and just look at it and go. Because the algorithm is kind of making most of us give in to video. Whether we
I don't want to. Like I don't enjoy a lot of it. You also go, what are you best at? My reels that do the best are when I screenshot a great tweet and set it into motion with music. Because guess what? I'm a writer, not a videographer. I'm a terrible videographer. I don't know how to weave stuff together. I don't know how to tell a visual story well, and I shouldn't. I've never done it. But I've done the 10,000 hours of excellence for Malcolm Gladwell. Like I've done that with writing. So I'm also, that's the tension. But the last thing I'd say is, I think you get, depending on what you're trying to grow, there is a great value to saying, I'm going to write out 50 ideas. I'm going to hire a film crew. I'm going to pay them X amount of dollars and I'm going to shoot 2 months of content and it's going to be fire and it's going to be professional. And that's what it requires. So I think we're all trying to figure that out. Like, where do I invest? What don't I invest in? What's the best time? The other thing I'd say, Ali, is that it's hard for me to focus. So I think for some people, if they're not writing books and maybe it's easy for them to focus, they can document all day with short little clips. But the reality for me is if I'm in a 90-minute writing session, it's minute 58 where it starts to flow, but I had to do the first 58 minutes first. And if I at minute 37 stop and do a video, it resets the clock. If a travel day, that's different. If I'm traveling to a client and I'm like 6 a.m., I'm at the airport. Now I just got here. That I can do. It's not breaking up my thought. But in a regular work day, if I was like some other creators, I couldn't focus. And they're also not trying, they're not writing their 11th book. So I have to, that's where comparison, another way to break it is you actually tell the truth. And the truth is that person hasn't written 11 books. They're a videographer person. Great. They're not on stage 50 times a year. They're doing something else. Yeah. Great. That's great for them. I'm like, the shape of my life requires this. And for me to be excellent requires this. So I'm going to keep doing this.
Yeah. Same. I mean, for me to do coaching calls all day and then every 30 minutes be like, I'm still at my desk.
Yeah, some of it would be boring. Like I would be like,
boring.
yeah, like you're like,
focus. Yeah.
now I'm really wrestling with this same paragraph that refuses to be smart, and I crossed it all out, and you're like,
yeah,
and
that's not sexy.
No, it's not sexy. And then you get to this spot where you're like, now in order to make it sexy, I have to be like the writing trick that will kill you if you don't do it. Boom, 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 and like so, like I always wrestle with that, like like how do you create an interesting hook that feels authentic to me, that isn't just like, this is the one thing that made me write 11 books. There wasn't one thing. It was like 1,000 things. So that's the other tension too, is that a lot of my life through a camera would look pretty ordinary. And you'd be like, oh, so you have to sit at your desk a lot? Like, oh, that's
how books are written?
Somebody asked me today. It was so sweet. They said, hey, they DM'd me, said, hey, I've got a book inside me. What program do you use? Because I know like it's not Word. And I was like, I'm sorry, it is Word. Like, cause I knew what they were asking. They were like, what's the magic program that makes books not a wrestle? And I was like, there's definitely a lot of programs, but the one I use is Word. And I know that they're like, oh, that's not, I was hoping.
That's boring.
That's boring. Like I have Word, so I could have written a book this whole time. I already have that one. So it made me laugh this morning.
No, that's fair. Oh, Word. We all feel that way about it, but it works.
Yeah.
Okay. For you, how do you balance your inputs and your outputs? Are you spending a lot of time reading books? Do you listen to podcasts? What inspires you? What does that look like?
Yeah, I'm a huge input guy. I read 100 books last year. I'll read 100 books this year. I might drop it down to 52 next year to kind of just mix it up. But I'll listen to a lot of audiobooks. So for me, I am a very negative person by nature. So I have to work very hard to be positive and productive. So I start pretty low in the morning. It's like the joke I sometimes do is like, it's like I forget everything overnight. Like every night I sleep, I wake up and it's like, oh, I'm back to negative. Like yesterday we ended positive. So I have to kind of get back up. So I'll read, in the morning. I'll listen to an audiobook on a run. Like when I'm driving somewhere, I'm listening to an audiobook. When I'm putting away laundry, I'm listening to an audiobook. I'm listening to positive, encouraging music. So like I'm a big kind of input guy that way. Podcast, if a friend goes, hey, this podcast episode was great, it reminded me of you, like I'll listen to the podcast. I'm engaging a ton. And then I'm also like, I track hours like a crazy person. Like I'm a big, like it was last July, I started to say, okay, I want more wisdom. Let me go spend some hours towards that goal. So I just started tracking wisdom hours, and I define that as like a conversation with a friend that's encouraging, an audiobook I'm listening to, me writing, that's a wise thing for me to do. And then it just expanded from there. It was like, if I'm running, that's wise. Like it's helpful for my emotional health and my physical health. So then it's just started expanding. And so I've kept track of that for over a year now. And then it becomes a game where I'm like, I want to beat last week's number. I want to beat last month's number. So I write down every hour like a little hash mark. Every hour I finish, I get to win. So I'm winning all day. And they're little, enjoyable. Like nobody knows, nobody sees that. The 99% of people who listen to this will be like, that's a weird thing to be into. I'm like, yeah, I don't, like one of my soundtracks is, I don't care if it's weird, if it works. If I'm able to write more, have better thoughts, have deeper relationships, be in better shape, and because I'm writing down on a piece of paper with a pen, like that might be the most cost efficient life change I've ever had, just keeping track of things. So yeah, I'm a big input guy, and then output, it's really about sources. So it's like, this is for a speech. I need a topic. I become an idea hoarder if I don't have a specified output. Like there's been years of my life where I just put thousands of ideas on those shelves behind me, then they didn't go anywhere. And now I'm just an idea hoarder. I'm just collecting them like somebody on the show hoarding. And like some, like Jenny comes in and is like, you don't need all these books. I'm like, I might use them someday. And she's like, well, you're not, you haven't. So I really try to say, okay, this is a real idea. This is a book idea. This is a speech idea. This is a soundtrack I think I need to practice because I'm having a hard time with this part of my life or whatever. So I try to not just be all input, but be lots of output as well.
I like that. Speaking of inputs, you'll like this. In my office, I have a mirror on the back of a closet door, and it's just written on dry erase marker things that make my life better. And so as I do them every day, I don't do all of them every day, but I put a little check mark and then I erase at the end of the day. And it's like, did I listen to the Bible recap? And did I do my reading, breath work, stretching, read for fun, gratitude? Some of it is, I can't read from this far away. Did I talk to a friend? Just little things like that, because it reminds me to do it. And I've gamified it because I want to get as many check marks.
Oh, yeah. Amen.
Yeah,
Amen.
I love that.
Yeah. And I love that you wrote it down, because I think one of the facts of life that you don't remember good things. It's hard to remember good things for whatever reason. Your brain has a negativity bias. There's a lot of science, but you forget the things that you enjoy and you forget the things that keep you happy and healthy. So everybody I've worked with, when I've encouraged them to try some things like this, it's always like a reunion. They bump back into something like, why did I stop doing this? Like I used to love to walk in our neighborhood, and I didn't have an official stop date, but then 6 months have passed and I didn't do it. And then I just got a new pair of walking shoes and I went for a walk and I was like, oh, I've missed this. It feels like a reunion with something. And so I think having a list is super fun and super easy.
Yeah. And the days I get all the check marks, I'm winning.
Yeah, it's a great day. The day, like, you're crushing. Yeah, I think that's
pretty much.
Yeah. And I think the myth is, I think that people that don't do that think that people who are successful aren't doing that. And I think everybody I've been around who's successful, who has the kind of life I'd like to have, family that loves them, kids that love them, spouse that loves them, they're in reasonable health. Like, they're not bodybuilders, but they're in good health and they're going to enjoy their 60s and their body in their 70s, whatever. They're financially successful, all that. They're doing things. They have systems. They're playing games. If you look behind the curtain, they're like, oh, this wall of knobs and dials. Yeah, I do some stuff to keep me. Like, and I think that's what's fun about Smart Girl Summer. I'm sure you get to ask people about their dials and ask people about what are the games you play? Like, what are the things? And I think when you're not living that way, you think you don't know that everybody else is that's at that level. And what's fun is if you'll ask them, they'll tell you, and then you get to kind of build your own dashboard of what keeps Jill happy, what keeps Bill happy, whatever.
Yeah, that's a great way to synthesize it. It doesn't happen by accident. Nobody stumbles upon a life that's well put together and go, oh, I just got lucky. I guess I'm just blessed.
No, dude. And they're like, and it's so, that's the hard part about life, is that it is simple. And that's hard because then you have to wrestle with the like, well, then why am I not doing it? Like, it'd be one thing if you were like, man, I don't know what it takes to be connected to a lot of people. And you're like, well, you should be encouraging. That's one of the things. Nobody who's really has a lot of friends is a really serious discourager. Like, I've never met somebody that would say, yeah, Mike always empties me when I'm around him. He's like a dementor in my life. And I really appreciate how he removes joy from my life. No, Mike is positive. Like, and Mike is like, remembers things about you. So like, you could make a list of like, here's how to be connected to more people and then do those things. And it's just the doing. Like, it's just a matter of the doing. And then you find ways to encourage yourself to do the doing. Like, you find hacks for that. Like, you don't just beat yourself up and go, why am I not doing this? I know I should do this. You go, oh, it's going to turn out like I need 10 things that'll encourage me to do this. So, and that's its own game.
Totally. Okay. What about for you? Do you want to share a dream or a goal for your future, and potentially how you're hacking life to get there? Because again, it doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah. So I want to build kind of like a compound that my kids want to return to.
Me too.
We have a mountain house right now, and it's an amazing mountain house, and I'm so grateful for it. And one thing I've learned, you asked that question, is you can be content and ambitious at the same time. You can hold both things in your hands. So I'm very content. And we have a mountain house. Like, what? Like, that's amazing. I never thought I'd ever be a person that's like, oh, a mountain house. Like, it's crazy to me. But I'd also like to have a mountain house that had a view, or a small house that we could have the kids live in if they wanted to live in there. Or like, I've just seen families that have long-term generational love and wealth and all the stuff do stuff like that, where grandparents are deliberate about building a place kids want to return to, where they go, like, we always hosted here. We always do this. So we're already doing that. Like, we hosted my oldest daughter, Ellie, and 7 of her sorority sisters at fall break. And I told my wife, I was like, we're billionaires. Like, we are billionaires. This is the wealth that matters the most. I was so thrilled.
I love that. That's wonderful. And congrats on the mountain house. Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'm blown away. We spent 6 weeks at it this summer. So that's what people, I think sometimes I go. Like I'm like you, like high performance. Like it's hard for me to understand people who don't want to do fun stuff because there's so much fun stuff available. Because I took 6 weeks off this summer. I did one speaking engagement in the 6 weeks, and we just hiked and we read and we did all the stuff. And so it's already become a place where it's like, okay, we can do downtime there. So that's what I like, that balance of like, can you have high performance and high peace? And I think it's possible. And so I'm always like, all right, well, how do I do that?
I like that. I like that. Now I want to go back in time. This was one of your conferences, maybe 2011, 2012. Yeah. I think your oldest daughter and maybe your other daughter, were they selling bracelets?
100%.
Table?
Yeah.
And they were selling
yeah.
Because when you wrote the book with them, I was like, well, of course they wrote How Teens Win, because he was teaching them how to hustle when they were young.
That is so funny. I've done a bunch of these podcasts, but that's the fun part of doing a podcast with a friend who you've done 12, 13, 14 years of life with. So at the START conference, they were selling bracelets and like a bunch of stuff in the lobby. And that started my oldest daughter, Ellie, when I spoke at summer camps. So like I would speak at this summer camp in Panama City Beach, and we love PCB. Like we're pretty gritty when it comes to a beach. Panama City Beach is the jam. But I spoke to these high school summer camps, and my daughter, who was, I don't know, like 9 at the time, 8, was like, hey, I'm going to make rainbow loom bracelets. So she was like, from stage, wear these bracelets, mention that I'll be in the lobby selling them and that they're handmade by a child. Because she was essentially like, Dad, no offense to you, no 15-year-old teenage boy is going to want to buy your book merch during a summer camp. Like, but they will buy a bracelet because kids like bracelets. Mm-hmm. And she made thousands of dollars like on rainbow loom bracelets. So they've always been kind of like, all right, and we've always encouraged that too, like in their own way. That's the thing with How Teens Win. I hope one of the things parents take from it is that you encourage different kids different ways. Mm-hmm. So like Ellie, for instance, is an introvert. McCrae, my youngest daughter, is an extrovert. So when it came to like sports, Ellie gravitated to swimming. It's the world's most introverted sport. You're literally underwater. Like no one can really see you. You can't hear other people. The clock is the clock is the clock. There's no politics. Like, and you're by yourself. You have a swim cap on. You can barely recognize the person. Like I told Ellie, 67% of the time I was at a swim meet, I was able to see which one you were. The other 37%, I was cheering for somebody else's kid because they all look the same. And so like that was perfect for her. McCrae, as an extrovert, she loved community. So cross country was a better fit. Cross country is it's her and 5 of her friends running in the woods on a beautiful fall day. Like she wasn't motivated by the final time, really. She was motivated by the relationships. And so that's a big part of helping your kids with goals is going, okay, here's what lights them up. Here's what's interesting to them. How do I help show them a goal that fits that and also isn't my goal? Like I love to run. I've never forced that on Ellie because that's not her. And I've asked her, there was a couple of years where I'd go, hey, do you want to go on a run? Do you want to get into it? Like I'll buy you a pair of sneakers. And she was like, no, it's not. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I didn't make her do it because that would have had the opposite effect.
That's great.
I invited her to it because I want her to know she's always welcome. But McCrae and I just ran the Nashville Half Marathon because she likes to run. So that fit her better. And so I think that's part of parenting and part of goals too, is figuring out what fits them.
Oh, that's such good advice. This is a phenomenal book. I mean, you kind of know what you're doing around
I appreciate that.
Books, but it really, really good. Talk about the best moments list.
Yeah. So the best moments list initially started in All It Takes Is a Goal, which is kind of the adult book. This is the teen book. And so I just find it very intimidating when somebody says, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? What's your 30-year plan? Like that just paralyzes me. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. And like, oh, I have to know what the next 20 years look like before I change my life today. Like that's a lot of pressure. And so with kids, where you see it is you go to an 18-year-old, hey, I just need you to make a major decision for college and it's going to be $200,000 and it's going to shape the next 12 years of your life and just go, like, good luck. Like, and or we go, what's your thing? Like parents say that to kids when they graduate, what are you doing next? And they go, oh my, like, I got to know what's the next. And so in our culture, we put a lot of pressure going forward. And then we do a second harmful thing where we go, don't look back. You're not going that direction. And we miss all this learning about who we really are. So I wanted to do something kind of counterintuitive and say, what are the things that light you up? What are the things that in the last year, in the last 18 months for a kid? Now, for an adult, I'd say the last 10 years. Like, let's look at your jobs. But for a kid, what are the things you enjoy that you naturally gravitate to? So it becomes this kind of mirror where they can actually see themselves. So like for McCrae, my youngest daughter, an example would be on her own, got a job helping teach art lessons at an after-school program that she had taken as a kid. And then 5 years later, was like, I think I could go help Mr. Dennis. And she loved it. And she would come home lit up. And so Jenny and I, as a mirror, would go, hey, we want you to see that, like, what's going on? Like when you're around kids, when you're helping, when it's creative, when it's pretty free form, it wasn't highly structured, that really encourages you. We're not telling you have to make a decision with that right now, but let's put that in what I would call the McCrae Owner's Manual. I would argue your mirror is a list of it's a page of the Alley Owner's Manual. I know these are the things that make me run well. Awesome. So we're trying to gather those for our kids so that later when they do have to make a college decision or they do get into a career situation, they have the self-awareness about, oh, that's right. Here's who I am. Oh, that's right. Here's what encourages me. Because I think it's really easy for kids to get into sports even where you go, man, I hate that. Like a kid who's motivated by numbers and individual self-performance, like would have a hard time on a football team, but have a great time on a golf team. If you said like, if he's nerdy or she's nerdy and like loves numbers and loves precision, and you go, okay, you're going to do a sport like football where you're one cog in a big machine, your direct effort's hard to measure. Like, okay, you're going to block for somebody, like you're going to be on the line and you're not going to have any stats really. And your effort matters, but there's 10 other people whose effort are going to be kind of clumped together. They'd go, oh, I guess I have to do football because my dad likes football. Or you can be on a golf course and it can be you versus you. And you can measure as much data as you want. You can go get your clubs fit. Like we'll get your clubs perfectly fit and you'll have scorecards and it's quiet in your head. And there's not 1,000 people watching. There's not that pressure, so like that's what a best moments list does is it introduces a kid to themselves and it does it via the vehicle of joy versus the vehicle of pressure of you have to figure out the next 10 years.
Oh, I love that. I think that's such a game-changing concept for parents and for teens as well, because you're right. Nothing sucks worse than a 17, 18-year-old thinking, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? They have I don't know what I want to do professionally for the rest of my life. How would a kid know?
No. The thing I always think about, Allie, is if at 17 somebody asked you this, you couldn't have guessed at Blistum. Like at 17, you wouldn't have been like, I've never been to the Opryland, but I imagine there's a large hotel and it's, I imagine thousands of women and or podcasting. It didn't exist. It literally, when you were in college, podcasting had not been invented. How would you have possibly guessed that? Like it's absurd when you think about it. And I think we put that pressure on our kids. So it's hopefully a chance to do the reverse and go, well, let's talk about you. Let's talk about the things you like. And we're not making a decision today. We're just going to gather some information and it feels good to gather it. It's good information. I mean, that's the temptation as parents is it's so easy. They get straight A's and one B and you go, we got to talk about this B. Like we by nature focus on the things that aren't working. It's also the opposite of that where you sit down and go, man, like you're really good at this type of video game. Have you ever noticed that you gravitate to these four, like your last 4 video game purchases were all around this type of thing? I wonder what that means. Like, I wonder what that consistency is. And it creates a good conversation.
It's such a game changer. I will admit I didn't read the article. I just saw the headline go by yesterday, but Mark Andreessen, tech pioneer, he's quoted, and I think it's in the Atlantic maybe, that in 2034, 9-to-5s won't exist because of all the rapidly changing AI technology. Now, I don't know what is coming, but for us to even sit our kids down and go, you're going to be a great doctor, you're going to be a great accountant, we don't know what the work landscape is going to look like
Oh,
for
yeah.
them. So it's so smart to stay on top of trends and on top of technology. But it's most important, like you're saying, to really focus in on your kids like this and what lights them up and what they're passionate about, because we probably have no idea what all our kids are going to do. And that's wild.
The reality, too, is that they might not take the encouragement and will come back later. And you'll get, like, I've had that happen to friends where they felt like their daughter was perfectly suited for a small university. And they gave her that feedback and they gave her that encouragement and they gave her that advice. And she said, "You're wrong. I'm going to this big school." And she did a year there and hated it and came home crying and said, "I'm ready to go to a small university." So the reality, parenting's messy that way. Like it is. It'd be amazing if we all had kids that would say, you could say like, "Hey, here's the exact right thing." And my wife is really good at helping me with that. My wife, Jenny, we had this discussion the other day. One of my kids, they couldn't find their car keys. And I said, we have a drawer in the house where we keep all the car keys. And if you'll just put them in there when you come home, you'll never have to look again. And my wife said, "John, hold on a second. It took you 10 years of marriage to finally use the drawer. So I don't want you to get on their case." And I was like, and I said back, "I know it took me 10 years, but I can save her a decade right now. Like I could save you that decade." And that's the tension of parenting, is like, sometimes they're going to go on their own journey and learn at their own pace. Like that's one of the hardest things about parenting, is like, some kids are going to get that bruise and you would love to save them from, like, you have a 25-year-old, you would love to prevent that 25-year-old from ever having their heart broken. What parent wouldn't go, if I could wave the magic wand, but there's going to be some heartbreak and they're going to get fired from a job and they're going to and that. And so you have to be pretty open-handed as a parent and give them the space to learn at the rate they're going to go. And then celebrate the moments where you do get to come alongside them. Like Ellie, my oldest daughter, she's an accounting major and she's going to get her CPA and do the master's in accountancy. She never was excited about being an accountant in like 9th grade. Like it would be such a lie if I was like, "Well, Ellie, I always knew at 6 she was going to be an accountant." That was but what happened was we had this discussion, multi-year discussion, because parenting is about repetition. A lot of it's about repetition, where we said, you love patterns. Like you made a rainbow loom skirt on your own, figured out the pattern. You love to craft. You just made this sweater. You love the math of swimming because it's all about angles and precision. You loved high school band because music is about math. Let's look at a couple different options. Okay, well, here's a major that kind of lines up with that. Like here's a major that kind of lines up with that. And what lined up was accounting. And so she was able to go, "Wow, I do love these 5 things about life. And this major matches that." And she's enjoying the major now. And so there are times the kid is willing to hear it. The kid is willing to go, they trust you. We say to our kids all the time, like, our only goal is that you're happy and successful. Like we're not any advice we give you is aimed at that. There's not a single, and we had to say that more in middle school because there's more the why don't you like make my life better? Because the rules feel like they're making it worse. And we would have to say like, no, we're encouraging you to not hang out with that friend because that friend isn't making good decisions and you don't make good decisions when you're with that friend. We don't want you to not have friends. No. We want you to have so many friends. We just know in this particular situation, there's a lot of possible danger or hurt or whatever. And so you do have those conversations with your kids and it takes time and it's messy. But I think ultimately it's such a fun thing in the long run.
Totally. This is so good. I was telling you before we recorded that my then 17-year-old read your book over the summer, loved your book. He has not read this one yet. This is his next one. But for anyone listening, I just want them to hear me say that your work is so accessible for teens that it is one of those things. The more we share with teens, the more we give them work that is accessible and entertaining and educational. It's such a bonus to them. So congratulations.
I appreciate you saying that. And I received that compliment. I'm working on receiving compliments better versus shot blocking them. So thank you for saying that. And also share the credit with my kids, because when you write a book with teenagers, you learn how wrong you are about certain things. So during the writing process, I would go, here's 10 types of goals I think teens should do. And my kids would go, they don't care about that. We don't care about that. We don't care about that. This one we really care about. Or I'd say, here are 5 stresses teenagers have. And they go, nope. and you miss 7 we do have. And so I felt like I was really co-writing something where they had a voice to say like, yeah, this is what we really feel. And then what's been fun is that the audiobook has been the thing more parents have reacted to, because they've said, I can't get my 15-year-old son a book. Like, he's already not reading the books at school. A bonus book won't work. But my kids read the audiobook. So it's Elliot McRae. And parents would say, we drove to swim practice and listened to a chapter, and then it started a conversation. And because it's teenagers talking to teenagers, they listened in a different way. That's what we've all had this, like, you've been married like me a long time, where it drives our spouse crazy when you come home and you go, hey, somebody, like, I overheard somebody at a restaurant have this idea. I think I'm going to try that. And they go, I've been telling you for 3 years, you should try that. A stranger mentioned it at J. Alexander's, and now and it's the same with parenting. You'll tell your kid something 100 times, and then a teenager like Ellie or McRae will go, hey, here's the thing. If you want to try to be a National Merit Scholar, like, there's a couple things you do, or if you want to make a team, or if you want to enjoy, this part of your life more, try this. And they'll go, I think I'm going to try that. And as a parent, you just have to keep your mouth shut and not go, I've been telling you for 3 years that you should try that. So I think that's the benefit of teenagers talking to teenagers too, is that it changes the conversation.
Yeah. And anything that shows how smart parents really are in a new way, and you can trick your teens into realizing that, it's a win.
That's what's fun, is that you get to bring in a partner that's in the same spot you are. Like, a lot of times the parents will read the book first, and totally 100%, I think that's a great idea. And they'll go, oh, this person's on our side. So one of the things we deliberately don't do in the book is or in any teen book we write, we never attack the parent. There's a lot of kind of teenish books that go, your parents just don't understand you. Like, they don't like, and like, that's something I'm really deliberate about, is like, I'm pro parent, I'm pro family, I'm pro teenager. And so it's one conversation moving in the same direction.
Oh, so good. So good. Okay. You ready for some fun questions?
I love fun questions.
I mean, as
these are
fun. The whole podcast has
I know.
been fun.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you're an Enneagram 3. I don't need to ask you again.
Yeah. I thought I was a 7 for most of my life. And like, I'm very, like, you heard me, I'm writing down every hour of wisdom I invest. Come on. Yeah. That's very 3.
It is. I mean, a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
It's the most 3 thing you've ever heard.
What finally shifted you from, okay, maybe I'm not a 7, maybe I'm a 3?
It was a series. I met a bunch of other 7s, and I was like, oh, that's different. Dave Barnes, a friend of mine, a musician in town, was like, you're either the most goal-oriented 7 who's ever lived, or you're just a 3. And I was like, maybe I'm just a 3. And then I just started looking at the differences between a 7 and a 3 and going, yeah, the majority, like, if I had a scale, the rocks are going into the 3 bucket.
Okay.
And just the freedom to admit, I want to win. I want to accomplish. No one would call me easygoing and spontaneous. And like I'm funny. That's what tricks people, I think, is I'm funny. Yeah. So people are like, oh, he's funny. And like, beneath the surface, I'm like, how are we going to do these 7 goals?
I think this is the first time you've been on the show, and you've been on the show a ton of times as a 7. So I was taking a leap, being like, I'm pretty sure you're a 3.
Yeah, totally. So, no, but I probably had said years ago, like, oh, 7. But it was really when I started to really look into it and started to like, here's the problem with Enneagram tests, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. As an individual, it's easy to fill them out as who you want to be versus who you are, who you hope to be versus who you are. And I think that's not just Enneagram tests. That's every personality test ever created, where it goes, in a group, will you be encouraging to people? Who wants to write no? Because you feel like, or like, if you're at a party and there's a lot of people, would you like to go home early? You feel like a loser if you go, yeah, I do want to go home early. That would be amazing.
And some of them, they get really honest, like, or they get really deep, like, how likely are you to lie on an average day? And I'm like, never.
Lines for sinners. Yeah.
Oh, terrible. Yeah. It brings up a lot of emotion.
Yeah.
Okay. Second thing, what about a song that you like right now? You love music.
So it's funny. This is so dorky. There's a hill near our house. And when I'm finishing my run, I run to the same song every time, to the point that in my Spotify Wrapped, it's like, you really like, it's my number 1 artist. And it's so dorky. It is Busy Child by the Crystal Method. And they were like a 90s techno band. It's the best song. And so that's one that I listen to a ton. And then from a more faith-based, I listened to this song this morning to start the run. I got to start the run sometimes with a little bit of Jesus and then end with a little bit of angry rap. I can't finish a race like to Psalm 23. Like it's just, I need some anger. I need a little bit of cussing. Trust in God featuring Chris Brown. It's Elevation. So I've been listening to that a bunch. And then you and I have the benefit of living in Nashville area, and Lightning 100 is a fantastic local radio station that they play everybody before the rest of the country. So like Noah Kahan, who's blown up now, they were playing him for years, and he has a song. He's from New England and I'm from New England. And he has a song where the lyric is, I'm mean because I grew up in New England. I'm like, is that maybe that's why I can be mean, is that I grew up in New England. I really like the way he writes. He feels like as a lyricist in the vein of like Counting Crows to me.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Okay, great examples. What about a TV show or a movie?
We went through classic movies this summer, 6 weeks together. You got a lot of, so we would watch movies at night. Last night we watched Brewster's Millions, with, Richard Pryor. I don't know if you remember that one. We watched Ghost. And I was so encouraged about Ghost because in my head, I had misremembered the clay pottery scene. I thought that was when he was dead and Whoopi was really doing it. And I was wrong. I always remember being like, that's so creepy. It's really, I was wrong. That's at the beginning of the movie.
That's how I remember it.
No, it's not. It's not. They only dance. They dance for 30 seconds when it's Whoopi's body. It's not creepy at all.
That makes me feel much better.
Dude, I was like, this is about to be so weird. And it wasn't. I was like, oh, I had that backwards in my head. Like my brain misremembered it. So we watched like the Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr. We watched a bunch of capers. Funny, I posted online. I was like, hey, I need some recommendations. I want to show my kids some 80s, 90s movies. And some of them, the responses they gave me they must think I'm dumb because they were like, have you shown them Back to the Future? And I was like, what kind of terrible parent? She's 18 and 21. I'm like, oh, I've never shown them Back to Monster if I had rejected that move from them, or like Jurassic Park. So like some of them we had long shown them, but there were some other like Big, Forrest Gump. Like we did a bunch of classic movies. So that's what we rocked out this summer.
I love that. We started with classic movies, but one of my sons has become like, he's on Letterboxd. So he's in a cinephile era.
Oh, nice.
Right?
Nice.
And he decided recently, so it's 18-year-old, 23-year-old. And on movie night, we're going to watch The Shining. I'd never seen it.
Oh, yeah.
It's
creepy.
Uncomfortable.
It's creepy.
Yeah, I need to check movies out more.
You know, Stephen King hated that movie. Isn't that wild?
Really?
Yeah, it's his book. Obviously, he hated the movie. He hated what they did, and I think part of it is I thought one of the best scenes in that movie was all work and no play make Jack a dull boy. Yeah. Like when she discovers he's just been typing the same, like that was shock. That's not in the book. So I wonder if there's part of him that's like, man, like that's not in the book. And there's other stuff like that where
as an author.
As an author. Yeah.
Change my work.
Yeah. And they kill the character in the movie that they didn't kill in the book. And so but yeah, that one's creepy. That one is.
That was tough to watch with the kid. Yeah. I could see as an author, you want to burn it all down. Okay. What about a product? Something that you love, something that you've told somebody about.
I haven't done anything with this yet. It's not a product I love. This is just how my brain works. We're in a Walmart in the mountains. And they had cup of noodles. If you're watching this on video, cup of noodles. And it was campfire s'mores.
It was terrible.
Yeah. Like somebody made this. Like it's campfire s'mores, ramen noodles and sauce. And it's got marshmallows and it's brown noodles. And I guess it tastes like chocolate. I don't even know.
That's a reel.
I immediately bought one. I'm going to make a reel. And my angle is going to be the next time you think your idea is silly, I want to show you a product that made it to market. I want to show you there's nothing you will ever try to come up with that is a worse idea than campfire s'mores ramen noodles. Like that's
a great hook. Yeah. That's a great hook. I'll watch that reel. So, I will share that.
Yeah. Well, that'll come to my social media eventually. It's been sitting on my desk for like a month and I'm just like, I gotta do this already.
Literally, I'm nauseous. Just
okay. And then the one I like Thinking Putty. I like that Crazy Aaron's Thinking Putty. I love, it's just a silly product. You can, it's like a stress ball in essence. And what was funny when I bought it, we were walking around with our kids, and I was saying, "Oh, I can't wait to reduce stress with this, and stress and stress and stress." And my daughter Ellie was like, "Isn't it interesting that the title of the product is Thinking Putty, and you immediately went to the negative part?" I was like, "Ooh, that was little. Like, let's should lay down on a couch and get therapist hours out of this." And she was right. I took the negative approach to it versus just all these thoughts I'm thinking. I was the one who called it stress reduction, and she called it thinking because that's the name of the product. So, but I do love that product.
Okay, I'm going to try that product.
It's great. Comes in a million varieties. You'll love it. It's very silly.
I hope there's one that's glittery.
Oh, there's a million that are glittery. Some glow in the dark. Some are magnetic. Like, you'll love the business model of it because you're like, this dude figured it out. He dialed it in.
I know. I love it. Well, thank you for coming back on the show. You are always
a hit.
Have you on as often as I can. Tell everyone where to find you and give them one last pitch on why they need this book.
Yeah. So you can find me at jonacuff.com, JONACUFF.com. The book, How Teens Win, is available everywhere books are sold. We also did one called Your New Playlist that's about mindset for teenagers. And one last pitch for the book. I would just say, I think it's getting harder and harder for teens, and it's getting harder and harder to parent as there's more challenges. Your kid is a target audience for a lot of companies and brands that don't have your kid's best in mind. So if you've ever felt like it's challenging as a parent, let me affirm that it is challenging. And when I was a kid, my parents didn't have to worry about me gambling because I would have had to ride my bike to a casino, or I would have known a bookie, and I didn't know how to ride my bike to Vegas or Mississippi for a riverboat. But now we just talked to an estate lawyer the other day that said he's seen families lose all their money via online gambling from kids. Like he said, online gambling is the new porn because they start fantasy football in 7th grade and they're trained on how to do it for 5 years. And then money enters it with DraftKings and other things in 11th grade, 12th grade. So just give yourself some credit, parents. It is more challenging in a lot of ways, a lot of things that you didn't have to deal with or your parents didn't have to deal with. But even in the midst of all that challenge, there's a lot of tools. And this is one of them that I think will really encourage and engage your teenager.
Oh, so good. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Great. He's the best, right? And maybe we can say this is Smart Boy September. No, we won't say that. That's ridiculous. But of course, I'm giving away copies of his book. If you are listening to this, take a screenshot, put it on your Instagram story, tag me and tag John. I'm giving away 10 copies of his book. So lots of books to be given. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching on YouTube. Be sure that you've subscribed and you like and you leave a comment. And of course, I'm so glad that you're here. I am so glad that we have this time together every week to learn from other people, to get the benefit of their wisdom and for them to speak into our lives, because you know that investment in you, in your spiritual health, in your emotional health, and your professional success, it benefits everybody, not just you. And I believe in what's inside of you. I believe in your dreams. I believe in your goals. And I know that you're making an impact on this world for good. That's why you're here. God has created you to stand strong and bring something special and unique to this world that only you can bring. And I love getting to be a little part. I love getting to host conversations. I love getting to coach you and equip you. So keep stepping up, keep showing up, keep loving well, because you know the truth. You cannot break a woman who gets her strength from God. I hope you have a great day, and I'll be back with you soon. No, let me do that again. Okay. I don't even know if that was a good intro. Hold on. And we're out. Cut.